A century-old mistake still dominates breakfast tables worldwide. A decades-old accident sits in nearly every American home. A wartime failure became a billion-dollar toy empire. These represent household products that weren't invented through careful planning or brilliant design. They were stumbled upon by accident. Within laboratories, kitchens, and workshops, researchers and inventors, pursuing completely different goals, accidentally created some of the most successful consumer products in history. From food items that transformed entire industries to toys that captivated generations. These chance discoveries continue to shape our daily routines in ways their creators never imagined. Today we're exploring 10 of these accidental household staples that continue to dominate markets in 2025, proving that sometimes the most revolutionary innovations emerge from the most unexpected failures. These stories reveal how curiosity, persistence, and a willingness to recognize opportunity in mishaps can transform accidents into empires. The breakfast revolution born from religious extremism. The breakfast cereal industry represents about $6 billion annually in the United States alone, with this massive market tracing back to 1894 Battle Creek, Michigan, where Dr. John Harvey Kellogg operated the Battle Creek Sanitarium with the fervor of a religious crusader. Kellogg wasn't just any physician. He was a Seventh-day Adventist who believed that diet directly controlled human morality and spiritual development. His sanitarium attracted wealthy patients seeking health cures, but Kellogg had a hidden agenda that went far beyond physical wellness. Dr. Kellogg maintained that certain foods stimulated what he considered dangerous human impulses. He particularly targeted meat, spices, and anything with robust flavor, convinced these foods encouraged immoral behaviors. The doctor preached that bland, flavorless food was essential for achieving moral and physical purity. He spent countless hours developing recipes that would be as tasteless as possible while still providing basic nutrition. His goal was creating food so boring that patients would eat purely for survival rather than pleasure. The sanitarium kitchen became Kellogg's laboratory for moral nutrition. He experimented with endless combinations of grains, nuts, and vegetables, systematically removing any trace of flavor or appeal. Patients regularly complained about the terrible food, with many checking out early rather than enduring another meal of Kellogg's flavorless creations. The doctor interpreted these complaints as proof that his patients were still enslaved by their base appetites. He doubled down on his efforts, determined to create even blander alternatives that would force spiritual enlightenment through culinary suffering. Month after month, Kellogg tested new grain preparations, seeking the perfect combination of nutrition and monotony. He tried various cooking methods for wheat, corn, and oats, often working late into the evening in his quest for the ultimate bland food. His experiments consistently failed to satisfy patients, who found his grain concoctions either too hard, too mushy, or simply inedible. The mounting failures only intensified Kellogg's obsession with finding the right formula. He believed that if he could just create the perfect tasteless food, he could cure humanity of its moral weaknesses through diet alone. One evening in late 1894, exhaustion overwhelmed the doctor during another round of wheat experiments. He had been working for hours trying to create a palatable grain dish that met his strict standards for moral purity. After boiling a large batch of wheat, Kellogg planned to process it further, but fatigue forced him to abandon the project. He left the cooked wheat sitting in pots overnight, intending to resume work the following morning. This moment of human weakness would accidentally change breakfast forever. The next morning, Kellogg discovered that his abandoned wheat had dried out completely overnight. The grains had become stale and seemingly ruined, representing another failed experiment in his long series of disappointments. Rather than discarding the dried wheat immediately, Kellogg decided to attempt salvaging the batch through mechanical processing. He and his brother Will Keith ran the stale wheat through heavy metal rollers, expecting to create some form of flour or paste from the dried grains. Instead of producing the expected powder, the rollers created something entirely unexpected. The dried wheat emerged as thin, crispy flakes unlike anything the brothers had seen before. Each grain had been transformed into a delicate sheet that maintained its shape while becoming completely crispy. The texture was revolutionary. Light, crunchy, and easy to chew. Kellogg initially viewed these flakes as another failure, but his practical brother, Will Keith, suggested they serve the accident to patients rather than waste the entire batch. The sanitarium patients received their breakfast flakes with typical resignation, expecting another tasteless ordeal from Dr. Kellogg's kitchen. However, something remarkable happened during that morning meal. Patients actually enjoyed eating the crispy flakes, especially when served with milk. The accidental texture made the bland grain palatable in a way that Kellogg's previous experiments had never achieved. Word spread quickly through the sanitarium that breakfast had become genuinely edible for the first time in months. Dr. Kellogg recognized the significance of this accidental discovery immediately. He had finally created a grain product that satisfied his moral requirements while actually appealing to human taste preferences. The flakes contained no stimulating spices or flavors, meeting his strict standards for spiritual purity. Yet patients requested second helpings, suggesting that the unique texture compensated for the deliberate blandness. Kellogg began experimenting with different grains using the same accidental process, eventually perfecting a corn-based version of his wheat flakes. In 1896, Dr. Kellogg filed for a patent on his flaking process, officially documenting the accidental technique that created the first breakfast cereal. He initially named his creation Granos and marketed it exclusively through his sanitarium's mail-order business. The product gained popularity among health-conscious consumers who appreciated having a convenient breakfast option that required minimal preparation. However, Kellogg remained focused on the sanitarium business rather than commercial food production. Will Keith Kellogg saw far greater potential in their accidental discovery. While his brother continued preaching about moral nutrition, Will Keith recognized that the flaking process could create a massive consumer market. He eventually broke away from the sanitarium to establish the Battle Creek Toasted Corn Flake Company in 1906. Will Keith added sugar to make the flakes more appealing, directly contradicting his brother's anti-flavor philosophy. This business decision transformed their religious accident into a commercial empire. The corn flakes that emerged from Will Keith's company bore little resemblance to Dr. Kellogg's original moral food experiment. Marketing campaigns emphasized convenience and taste rather than spiritual purity, appealing to busy American families seeking quick breakfast solutions. The product's success inspired dozens of competitors, creating an entire industry built on variations of the Kellogg brothers' accidental flaking process. Battle Creek became known as the cereal capital of America, as numerous companies established operations there. Today's breakfast cereal market demonstrates the lasting impact of Dr. Kellogg's accidental discovery. The basic flaking process that emerged from one night of forgotten wheat remains the foundation for hundreds of modern cereals. Major manufacturers continue using variations of the technique that the Kellogg brothers patented in 1896, proving the enduring value of that 1894 accident. This massive market emerged entirely from a religious zealot's failed attempt to suppress human appetite through bland food. Yet his accidental flakes became one of humanity's most enduring food obsessions. But religious experiments weren't the only source of accidental household discoveries. Sometimes the most serious wartime engineering challenges produced the most unexpected consumer breakthroughs. The Navy engineers' Gravity-Defying discovery. Richard James arrived at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard each morning in 1943, carrying the responsibility of solving a critical wartime problem. As a mechanical engineer, James faced the challenge of developing springs that could stabilize sensitive instruments on naval ships during rough seas. Radar systems, communication equipment, and navigation instruments all suffered when waves rocked vessels unpredictably, throwing delicate machinery out of alignment. The Navy needed a stabilization system that could keep these vital tools functioning regardless of sea conditions. James spent his days designing tension springs specifically engineered to absorb ship movement and protect sensitive naval equipment. These springs needed precise calibration to counteract the forces generated by ocean waves while maintaining enough stability to keep instruments level. The engineering requirements were demanding, as the springs had to respond instantly to unpredictable movements, while never overcorrecting in ways that might damage the equipment they were meant to protect. Each prototype required extensive testing and modification, with James running calculations for spring tension, metal composition, and coil geometry. The shipyard's engineering laboratory buzzed with activity as James and his colleagues worked developing prototypes. Tables throughout the facility held various spring designs, each representing a different approach to the stabilization problem. Some springs used thicker wire for greater strength, while others featured tighter coils for more responsive movement. James experimented with different metals, testing copper, steel, and specialized alloys to find the perfect combination of flexibility and durability. Late one November evening, James remained in the laboratory long after his colleagues had departed. He had been working for hours, surrounded by prototype springs and detailed engineering drawings. His latest design showed promise in preliminary tests, but fine-tuning the tension requirements demanded meticulous attention to detail. The overhead lights cast shadows across his workbench, which was cluttered with springs of various sizes, measuring instruments, and pages of calculations. Fatigue clouded his concentration as he reached across the bench to retrieve another prototype for testing. James accidentally bumped one of his tension springs with his elbow, sending the metal coil tumbling toward the floor. He expected the spring to simply drop and bounce like any piece of metal, then roll under his workbench where he would need to crawl to retrieve it. Instead, something extraordinary happened that defied his engineering expectations and understanding of basic physics. The spring seemed to come alive as it fell, moving in a way that James had never witnessed before in years of mechanical engineering. The spring landed on its end and immediately began what appeared to be walking. It moved from the workbench to a wooden crate, then stepped down to the floor with a rhythmic, measured pace. Each movement transferred energy through the coils in a mesmerizing wave pattern that continued for several seconds. The spring maintained perfect balance as it navigated obstacles, moving with an almost organic fluidity that seemed impossible for an inanimate metal object. James watched in amazement as the spring continued its journey across the laboratory floor, finally coming to rest near the far wall. James picked up the spring and examined it carefully, finding no damage or unusual characteristics that might explain its behavior. The metal coil looked identical to dozens of other prototypes scattered around his laboratory. He dropped it again, and the spring repeated its walking performance with the same fluid grace. James spent the next hour experimenting with different release angles and heights, discovering that the spring's movement remained consistent regardless of how he dropped it. The physics behind this behavior challenged everything he understood about tension springs and energy transfer. Unable to contain his excitement, James gathered several springs and rushed home to his wife Betty with claims about discovering something revolutionary. He burst through their front door carrying an armload of metal coils, breathlessly explaining that he had found the next great American toy. Betty James listened to her husband's enthusiastic description with natural skepticism, wondering how a pile of industrial springs could possibly interest children. Richard demonstrated the walking motion on their staircase, and Betty immediately understood the entertainment potential her husband had accidentally discovered. The couple spent weeks developing their spring into a marketable toy, experimenting with different wire gauges and coil tensions to optimize the walking effect. They named their creation the Slinky after Betty found the word in a dictionary, appreciating its definition of sleek and graceful movement. Richard calculated that each Slinky would cost approximately 75 cents to manufacture, allowing them to retail the toy for $1 while maintaining reasonable profit margins. They invested their savings into producing an initial batch of 400 units, confident that consumers would share their enthusiasm for the walking spring. Toy store owners throughout Philadelphia rejected the Slinky immediately, viewing it as worthless scrap metal with no obvious play value. Store managers examined the plain metal coils and questioned why children would want such a simple, industrial-looking object. The couple faced rejection after rejection as retailers explained that successful toys needed bright colors, moving parts, or obvious entertainment features. Many store owners suggested that the Jameses had fundamentally misunderstood the toy market and should abandon their spring project entirely. Determined to prove the Slinky's appeal, Richard and Betty arranged a demonstration at Gimbel's department store in downtown Philadelphia during the 1945 Christmas shopping season. They set up a simple display featuring a wooden board positioned at an angle, allowing the Slinky to demonstrate its walking ability for passing shoppers. The couple had no experience with retail sales or toy marketing, relying entirely on the Slinky's natural appeal to attract customers. They arrived early on demonstration day with their 400 units, uncertain whether anyone would show interest in their unusual creation. The demonstration exceeded every expectation as crowds gathered to watch the Slinky's hypnotic movement. Children dragged their parents over to witness the walking spring, while adults stood mesmerized by the physics display. Within 90 minutes, all 400 units had sold completely, stunning both the Jameses and Gimbel's management. Store employees had never witnessed such rapid sales for any toy, particularly one that appeared so simple and unassuming. The success proved that toys did not need elaborate features or flashy designs to capture public imagination. This simple metal coil has since sold millions of units over decades, proving that the most captivating toys often emerge from the most serious scientific work. But naval engineering wasn't the only wartime field producing unexpected household discoveries. The wartime rubber crisis that bounced back. A failed World War II experiment has sold millions of units annually since its 1950 launch and sits in countless American homes today. This substance emerged from one of the most desperate periods in modern history, when scientists worked around the clock to solve critical wartime shortages. The story begins in 1943, when Japan's control over Southeast Asia had created a rubber crisis that threatened to cripple the entire Allied war effort. The rubber shortage of 1943 posed an existential threat to American military operations. Japanese forces had captured the Dutch East Indies and Malaysia, cutting off access to natural rubber plantations that supplied 90% of America's rubber needs. Without adequate rubber supplies, the military couldn't produce enough tires for vehicles, gaskets for aircraft engines, or waterproof equipment for troops. Tank treads wore out faster than they could be replaced, and bomber missions faced cancellation due to tire shortages. The crisis forced American industry to find synthetic alternatives or risk losing the war through supply chain failure. General Electric's research laboratories in Schenectady, New York, became ground zero for solving America's rubber problem. The company assigned its best chemists to develop synthetic rubber that could match the performance of natural materials while using readily available domestic ingredients. The pressure was enormous, as every failed experiment potentially cost Allied lives on distant battlefields. Military contracts worth millions of dollars awaited the first company to crack the synthetic rubber formula, making this research both patriotic duty and business opportunity. James Wright arrived at General Electric's laboratory each morning knowing that American soldiers depended on his success. The 35-year-old chemist had built his reputation through methodical experimentation and careful attention to chemical properties. Wright understood that synthetic rubber required finding the perfect balance of flexibility, durability, and temperature resistance. Natural rubber achieved these properties through complex molecular chains that had evolved over millions of years, challenging chemists to replicate nature's perfection using artificial materials. Wright's laboratory resembled a battlefield of failed experiments, with dozens of rejected formulas scattered across his workbenches. He had systematically tested hundreds of chemical combinations, each promising to unlock the secrets of synthetic rubber production. Early attempts produced materials that were either too brittle in cold weather or too soft in heat, making them useless for military applications. Wright documented every failure meticulously, understanding that each unsuccessful experiment eliminated one possible path toward the solution. One autumn morning in 1943, Wright decided to experiment with combining boric acid and silicone oil, two chemicals that had never been mixed for rubber research. He expected this combination to produce another disappointing result in his endless series of failures. But scientific thoroughness demanded testing every possible formula. Wright measured the chemicals carefully, following his standard protocols for combining new substances. He mixed the boric acid into the silicone oil slowly, watching for any immediate reactions that might indicate promise or danger. The mixture began behaving unlike anything Wright had encountered in months of rubber research. Instead of forming a solid mass or remaining liquid, the substance seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously. When Wright poked it with a stirring rod, the material felt solid and maintained its shape. However, when he stopped applying pressure, the substance flowed like thick liquid across his workbench. This dual behavior contradicted basic principles of chemistry that Wright had studied throughout his career. Wright's confusion turned to excitement as he discovered more unusual properties of his accidental creation. The substance bounced when dropped, reaching heights 25% greater than natural rubber balls. It stretched like taffy when pulled slowly, but snapped cleanly when yanked quickly. Most remarkably, the material could transfer ink from newspaper pages, creating perfect mirror images of printed text and photographs. These properties suggested applications far beyond rubber replacement, though Wright couldn't immediately identify what those applications might be. Despite its fascinating characteristics, Wright's substance failed every test for military rubber applications. The material couldn't maintain consistent properties under temperature changes, making it unsuitable for vehicle tires or aircraft components. General Electric's management showed little interest in Wright's bouncing putty, focusing laboratory resources on more promising rubber alternatives. Wright continued working on rubber synthesis while keeping samples of his unusual substance for entertainment purposes. During company gatherings and dinner parties, Wright would demonstrate the material's strange properties to guests, who marveled at its ability to bounce, stretch, and copy newspaper images. These demonstrations provided Wright's only satisfaction from months of failed rubber research. The substance remained a laboratory curiosity for 7 years while Wright pursued other research projects. General Electric eventually solved its rubber problem through different chemical approaches, rendering Wright's bouncing material obsolete for its original purpose. Peter Hodgson encountered Wright's creation during a 1950 business meeting at General Electric, where the chemist was demonstrating various research projects to potential investors. Hodgson worked as a toy marketer, always searching for novel products that could capture children's imagination. While other visitors focused on serious industrial applications, Hodgson immediately recognized the entertainment value that Wright had overlooked for 7 years. The material's unique properties made it perfect for a children's toy. Hodgson negotiated licensing rights to Wright's formula and began developing it into a commercial product. He packaged the substance in plastic eggs, creating portion sizes appropriate for children while preventing the material from collecting dust and debris. Hodgson named his product Silly Putty, emphasizing the playful aspects that Wright had discovered accidentally during his serious rubber research. The toy launched in 1950, becoming an immediate sensation among children who had never seen anything behave like Wright's accidental creation. Silly Putty's success exceeded all expectations, generating millions in revenue during its first decade of sales. The toy became so popular that NASA included it on Apollo 8, where astronauts used it to secure tools in zero-gravity conditions. Wright's failed rubber experiment had accidentally created a product that would entertain children for generations while serving unexpected scientific purposes in space exploration. But wartime laboratories weren't the only places where accidents created lasting household products. Sometimes the most innocent childhood moments, the child genius who froze summer. An 11-year-old's forgetfulness created one of the most popular frozen treats worldwide, with billions sold annually across the globe. This frozen phenomenon emerged from the most ordinary evening routine imaginable, proving that revolutionary discoveries often hide within the mundane moments of childhood. The story begins in 1905 Oakland, California, where a young boy's simple mistake would eventually transform summer refreshment for generations of people worldwide. Frank Epperson spent his days like most children in early 20th century Oakland, playing outdoors until sunset forced him inside for dinner. The 11-year-old enjoyed experimenting with different drink combinations, particularly mixing flavored soda powders with water to create refreshing beverages. These powder drink mixes had recently become popular among American families, offering an affordable alternative to expensive bottled sodas. Frank took pride in creating his own custom flavors, adjusting the powder-to-water ratios to achieve the perfect taste balance. On this particular October evening in 1905, Frank followed his usual routine of mixing a drink on the family's wooden porch. He carefully measured soda powder into a glass of water, stirring the mixture with a wooden stick until the powder dissolved completely. The sweet, fruity flavors satisfied his thirst after a long day of outdoor activities. Frank planned to finish his drink before heading inside for dinner, but neighborhood friends called him away for one last game before darkness fell. The simple interruption that followed would accidentally change summer forever. Frank abandoned his drink on the porch railing, leaving the glass with the wooden stirring stick still inside. He intended to return within minutes to finish his beverage, but childhood games have a way of extending far beyond planned time frames. Frank became absorbed in play, completely forgetting about his abandoned drink as evening temperatures began dropping throughout the Oakland area. October nights in Northern California can bring unexpected temperature swings, particularly during the transition from warm autumn days to chilly evenings. That night, temperatures plummeted below freezing for the first time that season, creating conditions that no child could have anticipated. Frank slept soundly while nature performed an experiment with his forgotten drink mixture. The combination of soda powder, water, and wooden stick was about to undergo a transformation that had never occurred before in human history. The overnight freeze transformed Frank's forgotten mixture into something no child had ever experienced before. The liquid had solidified completely around the wooden stirring stick, creating a frozen cylinder of flavored ice. The wooden stick now served as a perfect handle for the frozen treat, allowing easy extraction from the glass without mess or difficulty. The consistency was neither too hard nor too soft, maintaining the ideal texture for eating while preserving the original flavor throughout the frozen structure. Frank's morning discovery filled him with wonder and excitement as he examined his accidental creation. The wooden stick provided an ingenious handle that allowed him to extract the frozen treat cleanly from a glass. He tentatively tasted his discovery, finding that the freezing process had concentrated the flavors while creating a refreshing texture unlike anything he had experienced. The treat was cold enough to provide relief from warm weather, but soft enough to bite comfortably, representing the perfect balance for a frozen refreshment. Frank recognized immediately that he had stumbled upon something special, though he couldn't predict the global impact of his discovery. He began experimenting with different flavor combinations and powder concentrations, perfecting his accidental technique through trial and error. Each evening, Frank would prepare new mixtures and leave them outside overnight, waking to find various frozen treats waiting for his evaluation. The wooden stirring stick remained essential to the process, providing both mixing tool and serving handle in one simple implement. Frank kept his discovery secret for years, delighting neighborhood friends with his mysterious frozen treats during warm summer days. He became the most popular child on his block, as friends eagerly awaited his latest frozen creations. Frank took pride in his secret recipe and technique, carefully guarding the simple process that created these magical treats. He experimented with different flavors, stick sizes, and freezing methods, gradually perfecting his original accidental discovery through years of dedicated experimentation. The gap between discovery and commercialization demonstrates how innovation often requires time to mature. Frank grew up, became a father, and continued making his treats for his own children, who begged for the frozen refreshments during summer heat. His children particularly loved the convenience of the stick handle, which prevented melting treats from dripping onto their clothes or hands. Frank's wife encouraged him to consider sharing his creation beyond their family circle, recognizing its potential appeal to other parents seeking convenient summer refreshments. Frank continued perfecting his frozen treat recipe throughout his adult years, adjusting flavors and textures based on feedback from his growing family. He experimented with different wooden stick sizes and shapes, finding that longer sticks provided better leverage, while thicker sticks offered more durability. Frank also tested various freezing containers, discovering that certain shapes produced better results than others. These years of refinement prepared his accidental discovery for eventual commercial success. In 1924, Frank decided to patent his creation, marking a pivotal moment in frozen treat history. Frank had spent 19 years perfecting his accidental discovery, transforming a childhood mistake into a refined product ready for mass production. He decided to formally protect his invention through the patent process, documenting the exact procedures and materials required to recreate his frozen treats consistently. The patent application required Frank to name his creation officially, which he called the Epsicle. The following year, Frank changed the name to Popsicle in honor of his children calling him Pop, creating a brand identity that would endure for over a century. This naming decision reflected the family-centered origins of his invention while creating a memorable brand that parents and children could easily remember. The Popsicle name captured both the personal nature of Frank's discovery and its appeal to family relationships, positioning the product as a treat that brought generations together. Frank's original formula remains virtually unchanged in modern popsicle production, demonstrating the perfection of his childhood accident. Today's frozen treats still use the same basic combination of flavored liquid and wooden stick that Frank discovered on that Oakland porch in 1905. Modern manufacturing has scaled up production dramatically, but the fundamental concept remains identical to Frank's original discovery. A child's forgetfulness created an industry that still follows his exact original formula, proving that sometimes the most successful innovations emerge from complete accidents. But childhood discoveries weren't the only source of accidental breakthroughs. Sometimes the most determined scientific efforts produced results that were precisely the opposite of what researchers intended. The adhesive that refused to stick. At 3M's sprawling research complex in St. Paul, Minnesota, Spencer Silver faced a challenge that would define his career. The 36-year-old chemist had built his reputation through methodical research and breakthrough discoveries in adhesive technology. Silver's assignment was straightforward but daunting. Develop the strongest adhesive ever created for industrial applications. Companies across America demanded bonding agents that could withstand extreme temperatures, violent vibrations, and corrosive chemicals while maintaining permanent adhesion under any conditions imaginable. The 3M research facility buzzed with competitive energy as teams raced to unlock the next generation of super-strong adhesives. Silver's laboratory contained hundreds of chemical compounds, each representing a potential pathway toward creating the ultimate bonding agent. His systematic approach required testing thousands of molecular combinations, adjusting chemical ratios with scientific precision, and documenting every result for future reference. Each experiment needed to surpass existing products in strength, durability, and resistance to environmental factors that had limited previous adhesive technologies. Industrial clients demanded adhesives that could bond metal to metal with strength exceeding traditional welding techniques. Aircraft manufacturers needed compounds that could secure components under extreme altitude conditions while maintaining flexibility during temperature fluctuations. Construction companies required bonding agents capable of holding structural elements together through earthquakes, hurricanes, and decades of weathering. Silver understood that achieving these performance standards would require revolutionary advances in adhesive chemistry rather than incremental improvements to existing formulas. Month after month, Silver conducted experiments that produced increasingly powerful adhesives, each iteration stronger than the last. His laboratory notebooks filled with detailed records of molecular structures, bonding strengths, and failure points for hundreds of different formulations. Silver tested adhesives on metal samples, plastic components, and ceramic materials, measuring their performance under controlled stress conditions. The pressure mounted as competitors announced their own breakthrough adhesive technologies, threatening 3M's market position in the lucrative industrial bonding sector. In 1968, Silver's latest experiment produced the exact opposite of what he intended, defying every principle of adhesive chemistry he had studied throughout his career. instead of creating the strongest bond possible. His experimental formula barely stuck to anything at all. The adhesive felt tacky when touched, but released easily without leaving residue or causing damage to test surfaces. This weakness represented a complete failure of Silver's research objectives, suggesting months of work had been wasted on a fundamentally flawed approach. The unique properties of Silver's accidental creation baffled everyone who examined it under laboratory conditions. The compound consisted of tiny acrylic spheres that adhered to surfaces at specific contact points, rather than creating the continuous bonding layer typical of traditional adhesives. These microspheres could hold papers together with surprising reliability while allowing clean separation without tearing or damage. The adhesive maintained its tackiness indefinitely, never drying out or losing its bonding properties despite repeated use. Silver's colleagues dismissed his discovery as useless, viewing the weak adhesive as proof that his research had taken the wrong direction entirely. Laboratory meetings became uncomfortable as Silver tried explaining potential applications for an adhesive designed not to stick permanently. Other researchers questioned why anyone would want a bonding agent that could be easily removed, arguing that permanence was the fundamental requirement for all industrial adhesives. Management pressured Silver to abandon his failed experiment and return to developing stronger formulations that met their original specifications. Despite widespread skepticism, Silver refused to abandon his accidental discovery, spending 6 years championing a solution without a clearly defined problem. He presented his microsphere adhesive at internal seminars, scientific conferences, and informal discussions with colleagues throughout 3M's research divisions. Silver believed that his unique adhesive represented a breakthrough in removable bonding technology, even though he couldn't articulate specific commercial applications that would justify continued development. Art Fry encountered Silver's presentation about removable adhesives during a routine company seminar in 1974, initially dismissing the concept as another laboratory curiosity with limited practical value. Fry worked as a chemical engineer in 3M's tape division while singing tenor in his church choir every Sunday morning. His dual role as scientist and musician created an unusual perspective on product development, as Fry regularly experienced practical problems that pure researchers might overlook during their laboratory work. Sunday morning frustration in church choir had plagued Fry for years as his bookmarks kept falling from his hymnal during services. Traditional bookmarks slipped out at crucial moments, leaving Fry scrambling to find the correct page while disrupting other choir members. Paper clips damaged the delicate pages of his expensive hymnal, while folding corners created permanent creases that reduced the book's value. Fry needed a bookmark that would stay in place reliably, but remove cleanly without causing any damage to the religious text. Fry's breakthrough moment occurred during a particularly frustrating Sunday service, when his bookmark fell out 3 times during a single hymn. Suddenly remembering Silver's rejected adhesive presentation, Fry recognized the perfect connection between his bookmark problem and the weak bonding properties that everyone else had dismissed as failures. The microsphere adhesive could hold his bookmark in place while allowing clean removal without damaging his hymnal pages. Fry realized that Silver had accidentally created the ideal solution for temporary attachment applications. Monday morning found Fry requesting samples of Silver's adhesive for bookmark experiments, beginning a collaboration that would transform both their careers. Fry applied the adhesive to small pieces of paper, creating prototypes that stayed in place when pressed against pages, but peeled away cleanly when removal was needed. The bookmarks worked perfectly, maintaining their position through normal book handling while never leaving residue or causing page damage. Fry began sharing his improved bookmarks with colleagues, who immediately recognized applications beyond religious services. The internal 3M development process accelerated as executives realized the commercial potential of removable adhesive notes for office applications. Market research revealed enormous demand for temporary paper attachment systems that could replace traditional staples, paper clips, and tape. The product development team refined Fry's bookmark concept into small note papers coated with Silver's adhesive, creating the first removable sticky notes designed specifically for office communication and organization. The 1980 rebranding from Press and Peel to Post-it notes sparked global adoption, as the new name captured the product's essential function more effectively. Marketing campaigns emphasized convenience, organization, and damage-free removal as key advantages over traditional office supplies. Sales exceeded all projections as businesses worldwide adopted Post-it notes for everything from message taking to project planning, establishing the product as an essential office tool. An adhesive designed to be permanent accidentally became indispensable by being temporary, revolutionizing how humans organize information. But industrial laboratories weren't the only places where failed products found unexpected second lives in completely different markets. The wallpaper cleaner that became child's play. A Kohl-era cleaning product transformed into a creative empire present in countless households with children worldwide. This remarkable evolution demonstrates how market forces can completely reshape a product's identity and purpose across decades. The substance that now fuels childhood imagination began its life addressing one of America's dirtiest domestic problems, proving that the most successful innovations often emerge when entirely different industries accidentally collide. The 1930s presented American households with a persistent and frustrating challenge that modern families can barely imagine. Coal heating systems dominated residential energy across the United States, providing affordable warmth during harsh winter months, while simultaneously coating interior surfaces with fine black soot. This coal residue penetrated every corner of American homes, settling on furniture, windows, and particularly wallpaper surfaces that absorbed the grimy particles throughout heating seasons. Wallpaper represented a significant investment for middle-class families, featuring intricate patterns and delicate materials that enhanced home aesthetics, while demonstrating social status. However, coal heating transformed these beautiful wall coverings into repositories for accumulated soot and grime. Traditional cleaning methods proved inadequate for removing coal residue without damaging the paper surfaces underneath. Harsh scrubbing destroyed wallpaper patterns, while chemical solvents often dissolved the adhesives holding paper to walls. This widespread household problem created enormous demand for specialized cleaning solutions designed to remove coal soot without harming delicate wallpaper surfaces. Cleaning product manufacturers across America competed fiercely for market share in this lucrative sector, developing various formulations that promised effective soot removal while preserving wallpaper integrity. The competition was intense, as families desperately needed products that could restore their homes to acceptable cleanliness standards. Noah McVicker operated his family soap company, Coot Products, from Cincinnati, Ohio, where he faced mounting pressure to develop innovative cleaning solutions that could distinguish his business from numerous competitors. The McVicker family had built their reputation through traditional soap manufacturing, but the changing market demanded specialized products for specific household challenges. Noah recognized that success in the wallpaper cleaning sector required developing something genuinely different from existing market offerings. McVicker began experimenting with unconventional formulations that departed from traditional liquid-based cleaning solutions. His innovative approach combined wheat flour, water, salt, and boric acid into an unusual putty-like substance that could be applied directly to wallpaper surfaces. This putty consistency allowed for controlled application and removal, enabling users to target specific areas without oversaturating delicate paper materials. The texture represented a revolutionary departure from spray-on or liquid cleaners that often damaged wallpaper through excessive moisture exposure. The experimental formula proved remarkably effective at removing coal residue without damaging delicate paper surfaces underneath. Users could press the putty against soot-covered areas, allowing the cleaning compound to absorb particles and grime through direct contact. The putty lifted coal residue cleanly without leaving chemical residues or moisture damage that had plagued previous cleaning attempts. McVicker's creation filled a genuine market need while demonstrating superior performance compared to existing alternatives. Coot Products marketed their wallpaper cleaner successfully throughout the 1930s and early 1940s, building a steady customer base among households struggling with coal heating residue. The product's effectiveness and unique application method distinguished it from competitor offerings, establishing the McVicker family business as a respected player in the specialized cleaning market. Sales remained strong as long as American homes continued relying on coal heating systems for warmth during winter months. However, technological progress gradually undermined the foundation of McVicker's business success. Electric heating systems became increasingly prevalent throughout American homes during the 1940s and 1950s, offering cleaner alternatives to traditional coal heating. These electric systems eliminated the soot problem entirely, removing the primary reason families purchased wallpaper cleaning products. The shift toward cleaner heating technologies threatened to obsolete McVicker's core product line completely. As electric heating reduced demand for wallpaper cleaners, the McVicker family business faced an uncertain future that required dramatic adaptation or potential closure. Noah watched his customer base shrink steadily as homes switched to cleaner heating systems, eliminating the coal residue problem his product was designed to solve. The family needed to find new applications for their putty-like cleaning compound or risk losing their business entirely to changing market conditions. Local teachers accidentally discovered that McVicker's wallpaper cleaning putty possessed unexpected properties that made it perfect for children's art projects in school settings. These educators found the putty safer and more reusable than traditional modeling clay, which often hardened quickly and contained potentially harmful materials. The putty remained pliable for extended periods, allowing children to reshape and reuse the material repeatedly during art classes. Teachers appreciated that the putty didn't stain clothing or furniture like traditional art supplies. Joseph McVicker, Noah's nephew, recognized the transformative potential of repositioning their wallpaper cleaner as a children's toy rather than continuing to pursue the declining cleaning market. This recognition required considerable vision and risk tolerance, as abandoning their established customer base for an entirely different industry represented a significant gamble. Joseph proposed that the family company pivot completely toward the toy market, despite having no experience in child-focused product development or marketing. The proposal sparked intense family discussions about abandoning their established cleaning market for the uncertain toy industry. Joseph argued that the declining wallpaper cleaner demand made staying in their original market unsustainable long-term, while the growing popularity among teachers suggested enormous potential in educational and recreational markets. The decision required courage to embrace fundamental business transformation rather than gradually declining with their original market. In 1956, the McVicker family committed to Joseph's vision by rebranding their wallpaper cleaner as Play-Doh and launching an aggressive marketing campaign targeting schools and department stores. This rebranding represented complete transformation from industrial cleaning product to creative children's toy, requiring new packaging, marketing materials, and distribution channels. The company invested heavily in establishing relationships with toy retailers while abandoning their traditional cleaning product distribution network. The rebranding to Play-Doh became an instant hit, transforming their small cleaning company into a major player in the toy industry. Department stores struggled to keep Play-Doh in stock as demand exceeded supply, validating Joseph's risky decision to abandon their traditional market completely. A product designed to clean dirty walls accidentally became the foundation of childhood creativity, proving that innovation often emerges when industries collide. But cleaning products weren't the only substances that found unexpected second lives through accidental discoveries. Sometimes the most profound transformations began the sweet accident that sparked diet culture. A laboratory accident from 1879 now influences billions of daily servings of artificial sweeteners worldwide. This massive market emerged from one man's failure to follow basic laboratory hygiene, proving that cultural shifts can begin with the smallest personal oversights. The substance that would eventually reshape how billions of people consume food started in a dimly lit chemistry laboratory at Johns Hopkins University, where a Russian immigrant worked tirelessly on experiments that seemed completely unrelated to human nutrition. Konstantin Fahlberg arrived at Johns Hopkins University in 1878, carrying the ambitions of countless immigrants seeking scientific recognition in America. The young Russian chemist had trained in German laboratories before accepting a research position under Professor Ira Remsen, one of America's most respected organic chemists. Fahlberg threw himself into his work with the intensity of someone who understood that success in American academia required exceptional dedication and breakthrough discoveries that could establish his reputation permanently. Fahlberg's assignment involved experimenting with coal tar derivatives, specifically benzoic sulfamide compounds that had potential applications in dye manufacturing and pharmaceutical development. Coal tar represented a waste product from gas production that chemists were systematically exploring for valuable chemical compounds. The work was meticulous and often dangerous, requiring precise measurements and careful handling of potentially toxic substances. Fahlberg spent countless evening hours in the laboratory, determined to unlock the commercial potential hidden within these industrial byproducts. The research demanded extreme precision as Fahlberg systematically tested different chemical modifications to benzoic acid structures. He documented every experimental variation meticulously, recording molecular weights, crystalline structures, and chemical properties of each compound he created. The work was tedious and often frustrating, as most experiments produced substances with no obvious commercial value. Fahlberg remained committed to his research despite months of disappointing results that yielded only academic knowledge rather than practical applications. Late one evening in February 1879, Fahlberg worked with particular intensity on a series of benzoic sulfamide experiments that had shown promising chemical properties in preliminary testing. He handled multiple compounds throughout the evening, carefully transferring substances between containers while taking detailed notes about their characteristics. The laboratory work continued well past dinner time as Fahlberg pursued a potentially significant breakthrough in his coal tar research. Exhaustion and hunger finally forced him to conclude his experiments for the evening. Fahlberg rushed home to his wife without following his usual laboratory cleanup routine, eager to share dinner after his long day of chemical research. The oversight seemed insignificant at the time, as tired researchers occasionally skipped thorough hand washing when leaving the laboratory late at night. Fahlberg had handled dozens of different compounds throughout the day, and the residues from his experiments remained on his fingers as he sat down to eat with his family. The pivotal moment occurred when Fahlberg reached for a piece of bread during dinner and noticed an intensely sweet taste that had nothing to do with the food itself. The sweetness was unlike anything he had ever experienced, far more intense than sugar, yet completely different in character. Fahlberg immediately recognized that the taste originated from his unwashed hands rather than the bread, suggesting that one of his experimental compounds possessed extraordinary sweetening properties that he had never anticipated. Fahlberg returned to his laboratory immediately after dinner, driven by scientific curiosity and the potential significance of his accidental discovery. He began systematic testing to isolate the source of the intense sweetness, examining every compound he had handled during his evening experiments. The process required careful tasting of minute quantities from each experimental batch, a dangerous procedure that demonstrated Fahlberg's commitment to understanding his accidental finding. His methodical approach eventually identified the specific benzoic sulfamide compound responsible for the remarkable sweetening effect. The substance that Fahlberg had accidentally created proved to be 300 to 500 times sweeter than sugar while containing 0 calories, representing a revolutionary breakthrough in food chemistry. This discovery suggested enormous commercial potential for creating sugar alternatives that could satisfy human sweet cravings without the caloric consequences of natural sweeteners. Fahlberg named his discovery saccharin and recognized immediately that it is accidental. Finding could transform the food industry and generate significant financial returns for whoever controlled the patent rights. However, Fahlberg's partnership with Professor Ira Remsen quickly dissolved into bitter conflict over patent rights and commercial control of the sweetening compound. Remsen believed that discoveries made in his laboratory using university resources belonged to the institution and should be shared with the academic community. Fahlberg argued that his personal oversight and accidental discovery entitled him to individual ownership of the patent rights. The dispute escalated as both men recognized the enormous commercial potential of artificial sweetening technology. Fahlberg ultimately established his own saccharin manufacturing facility after securing patent rights through aggressive legal maneuvering that excluded his former mentor from commercial benefits. This separation marked the beginning of the artificial sweetener industry while destroying Fahlberg's academic relationships permanently. Remsen felt betrayed by his former students' commercial ambitions, leading to a public controversy that damaged both men's reputations within the scientific community. Early 20th century opposition to artificial sweeteners emerged as health officials questioned the safety of consuming synthetic chemicals as food additives. Harvey Wiley, the head chemist at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, led efforts to ban saccharin as a dangerous substance that could harm public health. However, President Theodore Roosevelt dramatically intervened by declaring that anyone who says saccharin is injurious to health is an idiot, effectively legitimizing artificial sweeteners through presidential authority and ending official opposition to saccharin production. Saccharin gained widespread acceptance during both world wars when sugar shortages made natural sweeteners scarce and expensive. Military rationing programs increased civilian reliance on artificial sweeteners, creating widespread familiarity with saccharin-based products. The wartime experience normalized artificial sweetener consumption among Americans who had previously viewed such substances with suspicion. The 1960s diet revolution established artificial sweeteners as essential tools for weight-conscious consumers seeking to reduce caloric intake without sacrificing sweet flavors. Sales of saccharin-based products soared as Americans embraced diet culture and weight loss became a national obsession. Modern brands like Sweet and Low popularized saccharin consumption, making Fahlberg's accidental discovery a household staple. A chemist's failure to wash his hands accidentally created the foundation of modern diet culture, demonstrating how laboratory oversights can reshape entire industries. But academic research facilities weren't the only places where failed experiments found unexpected commercial success in completely different markets. The wallpaper flop that protects everything. A 1950s interior design failure became the leading packaging material worldwide since 1960. This complete transformation of what began as a misguided attempt to revolutionize home decoration into the backbone of global shipping infrastructure demonstrates how spectacular failures can become essential innovations. The story starts in post-war America, where two engineers believed they could change how people decorated their living spaces forever, only to discover that their greatest success would come from their most spectacular failure. Post-war America buzzed with optimism and hunger for innovation as families sought to express their newfound prosperity through bold home design choices. The rigid, standardized styles of wartime had given way to experimental approaches that emphasized creativity and personal expression. Homeowners eagerly embraced new materials and techniques that promised to transform their living spaces into showcases of modern American success. This cultural shift created enormous opportunities for entrepreneurs who could deliver revolutionary design solutions to eager consumers. Alfred Fielding and Marc Chavon recognized this hunger for innovation as the perfect opportunity to establish themselves as pioneers in the home decoration industry. The two engineers had spent years studying plastic manufacturing techniques, believing that synthetic materials represented the future of interior design. They envisioned a world where homeowners could choose from an endless variety of textured plastic wallpapers that would make traditional paper coverings seem outdated and boring. Their ambitious 1957 plan centered on creating textured plastic wallpaper that would completely replace traditional designs throughout American homes. Fielding and Chavon believed that plastic offered advantages that paper could never match, including resistance to moisture, durability against wear, and the potential for three-dimensional textures that would add visual depth to any room. They envisioned manufacturing wallpaper with raised patterns, interesting textures, and innovative designs that would revolutionize how Americans thought about wall decoration. The engineers invested their savings into designing and building a custom machine specifically engineered to produce their revolutionary wall coverings. This specialized equipment represented their complete commitment to disrupting the home decor market through technological innovation. Fielding and Chauvin spent months perfecting their manufacturing process, confident that their machine would produce plastic wallpaper that would capture the imagination of interior designers and homeowners across the country. However, their custom-built machine consistently produced plastic sheets filled with unwanted air bubbles, completely ruining their wallpaper dreams. The manufacturing process trapped air between layers of plastic, creating a bubble-filled material that bore no resemblance to the smooth, textured wallpaper they had envisioned. Each production run yielded the same disappointing results, with air pockets making the plastic completely unsuitable for wall application. The bubbles created an uneven surface that would never adhere properly to walls or provide the elegant appearance that wallpaper required. Fielding and Chauvin faced the devastating realization that months of planning and investment had produced a manufacturing system that couldn't create their intended product. The air bubbles that ruined their wallpaper represented a fundamental flaw in their production process that seemed impossible to eliminate. Despite numerous adjustments to their machinery and manufacturing techniques, the engineers couldn't prevent air from becoming trapped in their plastic sheets during production. Desperate to salvage their investment, the engineers attempted to market their failed wallpaper anyway, meeting rejection after rejection from interior designers who couldn't understand the appeal of bubble-filled plastic for home decoration. Design professionals examined the unusual material with confusion, unable to envision how air-filled plastic could enhance residential aesthetics. The bubbles made the material impossible to install smoothly against walls, while the texture appeared unprofessional and unappealing compared to traditional wallpaper options. The engineers pivoted to promoting their bubble-filled plastic as greenhouse insulation, believing that the air pockets might provide thermal protection for agricultural applications. This new direction seemed logical, as greenhouses required insulation materials that could maintain temperature while allowing light transmission. Fielding and Chauvin marketed their product to agricultural suppliers, emphasizing the potential energy savings that their innovative insulation could provide to greenhouse operators. However, testing revealed that their bubble-filled plastic provided virtually no thermal protection, making it useless as greenhouse insulation. The air pockets that had ruined their wallpaper dreams proved equally ineffective at preventing heat transfer in agricultural settings. This second failure demonstrated that their accidental creation lacked the properties needed for both decorative and practical applications they had considered. The engineers systematically tested over 400 different applications for their bubble-filled plastic material, each failure bringing them closer to bankruptcy. Fielding and Chauvin refused to accept defeat, methodically exploring every possible use for their unique creation. They tested applications in construction, agriculture, automotive, and dozens of other industries, seeking any market that might value their bubble-filled sheets. The extensive testing process consumed their remaining resources while yielding no profitable applications for their bubble-filled plastic. Each potential market proved unsuitable for their material, as the air bubbles that defined their product provided no useful properties for conventional applications. The engineers watched their savings disappear as they pursued increasingly desperate attempts to find commercial viability for their manufacturing accident. IBM's computer shipping problems in 1960 provided the breakthrough moment when the engineers realized that their accidental air-cushioned material offered perfect protection for delicate electronic equipment during transportation. The computer manufacturer needed packaging solutions that could protect sensitive components from shipping damage while remaining lightweight and cost-effective. Fielding and Chauvin recognized that their bubble-filled plastic provided exactly the cushioning properties that IBM required. The alignment between IBM's shipping needs and their accidental creation transformed the engineers' failed wallpaper experiment into an essential component of the emerging technology industry. Their bubble-filled plastic offered superior protection compared to traditional packaging materials while maintaining the flexibility needed for wrapping irregularly shaped electronic components. This discovery marked the beginning of bubble wrap's dominance in protective packaging applications. A wallpaper designed to beautify homes accidentally became essential to global commerce, proving that the most valuable innovations often emerge from the most spectacular failures. But failed manufacturing experiments weren't the only source of accidental breakthroughs that transformed entire industries. Sometimes the most profound discoveries emerge from moments of pure human emotion in the most unexpected places. The chef's revenge that conquered the world. A moment of kitchen spite in 1853 now drives America's favorite snack, with billions of pounds consumed annually. This massive market represents the complete dominance of a product that emerged from pure culinary revenge, proving that the most successful innovations often spring from the most personal conflicts. The substance that would eventually occupy countless American households began as an act of defiance between a talented chef and an impossibly demanding customer, demonstrating how professional frustration can accidentally reshape entire industries. Moon Lake Lodge stood as the crown jewel of Saratoga Springs dining in the 1850s, attracting the wealthiest and most influential figures in American society. The elegant resort catered to railroad barons, steel magnates, and political leaders who expected perfection in every aspect of their dining experience. The kitchen operated under intense pressure to satisfy guests accustomed to the finest European cuisine, with no tolerance for mediocrity or disappointment. Head chef George Crumb commanded this high-stakes culinary environment with skill and precision that had earned him recognition throughout New York's elite social circles. Crumb brought unique perspectives to his role as chef, drawing from his African-American and Native American heritage to create dishes that satisfied the sophisticated palates of America's upper class. His position represented remarkable achievement during an era when racial barriers limited opportunities for advancement in most professions. Crumb had built his reputation through years of dedication and exceptional culinary talent, earning respect from guests who valued excellence above all social considerations. His success at Moon Lake Lodge demonstrated that exceptional skill could transcend the prejudices of 19th century American society. The fateful evening that would change snack food history forever began like countless others, with wealthy guests arriving for dinner expecting flawless service and exceptional cuisine. Among the diners sat a particularly demanding customer who approached every aspect of his dining experience with uncompromising standards. His expectations for restaurant service reflected the perfectionist mentality that characterized America's business elite during this era of unprecedented industrial growth. The customer ordered French fried potatoes as part of his evening meal, expecting the carefully prepared dish that had become a standard offering at fine establishments throughout America. However, when the server presented his plate, the diner immediately expressed dissatisfaction with the preparation. The potatoes were too thick for his preference, lacking the crispy texture he desired. He sent the dish back to the kitchen with specific instructions for improvement, demonstrating the exacting standards that characterized wealthy patrons of the era. The kitchen staff prepared a second serving of French fried potatoes, adjusting the preparation to address the customer's complaints about thickness and texture. However, this attempt also failed to meet expectations, prompting another rejection and return to the kitchen. The customer's persistence in sending back the same dish multiple times created mounting tension in the kitchen, where staff struggled to understand exactly what would satisfy this particularly demanding diner. Crumb's frustration escalated with each rejected plate as his professional pride faced challenge from a customer who seemed impossible to please. The chef had spent years perfecting his French fried potato preparation, serving the dish successfully to hundreds of satisfied guests. The repeated rejections felt like personal attacks on Crumb's culinary expertise and professional reputation. The situation became particularly galling for a chef of Crumb's background, as he recognized that some customers might be testing his abilities based on racial prejudices rather than legitimate culinary concerns. The pivotal moment arrived when Crumb decided that conventional approaches would never satisfy this impossible customer. Rather than attempting another standard preparation of French fried potatoes, The chef chose to teach the diner a lesson through culinary extremes. Crumb resolved to create potatoes so thin and crispy that they would be impossible to eat with a fork, forcing the demanding customer to confront the absurdity of his repeated complaints. This decision represented both professional defiance and creative problem-solving that would accidentally transform American snacking habits forever. Crumb methodically sliced potatoes into paper-thin sections using the sharpest knife in his kitchen, creating translucent slices that barely maintained structural integrity. The extreme thinness required exceptional knife skills and careful attention to prevent the fragile potato slices from breaking apart during preparation. Each slice needed to be uniform in thickness to ensure consistent cooking, demanding the precision that had made Crumb one of New York's most respected chefs. The preparation process took considerably longer than standard French fried potatoes, but Crumb's determination to prove his point drove him to perfection. The chef then fried these ultra-thin potato slices until they became golden brown and completely crispy, creating a texture unlike anything previously served at Moon Lake Lodge. The extreme heat transformed the paper-thin potatoes into delicate, crunchy sheets that shattered at the slightest touch. Crumb seasoned the finished product with salt, creating what he intended as an inedible joke that would demonstrate the foolishness of the customer's excessive demands. The resulting creation was indeed impossible to eat with a fork, requiring diners to use their fingers for consumption. Crumb presented his spiteful creation to the demanding customer with barely concealed satisfaction, expecting the diner to finally acknowledge the absurdity of his complaints. The chef anticipated that the impossibly thin and crispy potatoes would prove his point about unreasonable customer expectations while potentially embarrassing the difficult patron. Instead, something completely unexpected occurred that would transform Crumb's moment of revenge into a revolutionary breakthrough in American cuisine. The customer not only enjoyed the ultra-thin, crispy potatoes, but enthusiastically demanded more, turning Crumb's intended punishment into an unexpected triumph. The diner praised the innovative preparation, declaring it superior to any potato dish he had previously experienced. Other guests at Moon Lake Lodge observed this enthusiasm and requested their own servings of the unusual creation, sparking immediate demand for Crumb's accidental invention. The creation quickly gained popularity among Moon Lake Lodge's wealthy clientele, who began specifically requesting what became known as Saratoga chips. Crumb's innovative preparation method became the restaurant's signature dish, attracting visitors who traveled specifically to taste the unique potato creation. By 1860, the success of his accidental invention inspired Crumb to open his own restaurant, Crumb's House, where Saratoga chips served as the featured attraction. The evolution from restaurant specialty to mass market phenomenon accelerated through technological innovations, including wax paper packaging and mechanical potato peelers that enabled large-scale production. By 1895, Ohio grocery stores were stocking potato chips, marking their transformation from local novelty to national snack food. These packaging advances allowed manufacturers to preserve freshness while distributing chips across greater distances, creating the foundation for modern snack food distribution networks. A chef's moment of petty revenge accidentally created humanity's most popular snack food, proving that anger channeled creatively can feed the world. But kitchen conflicts weren't the only personal struggles that produced unexpected commercial empires. Sometimes the most desperate attempts to solve private problems, the morphine addict's sweet solution. John Pemberton's personal battle with morphine addiction led him down a path that would accidentally create the world's most recognizable beverage. The Civil War veteran and Atlanta pharmacist found himself trapped between chronic pain from battlefield injuries and dangerous dependency on the only relief available to him. His professional knowledge of medicinal compounds gave him unique insight into his predicament while providing the laboratory skills needed to experiment with alternative pain relief formulations. Post-Civil War Atlanta presented a city rebuilding from devastation while grappling with the human costs of America's bloodiest conflict. Pemberton represented countless veterans struggling to adapt to civilian life while managing injuries that modern medicine barely understood. His morphine dependency was a common tragedy among Civil War survivors, as medical understanding of pain management remained primitive and opiate addiction was poorly recognized. The pharmacist desperately sought alternatives that could break his cycle of dependency without leaving him defenseless against chronic pain. In 1866, Pemberton created his first breakthrough formula, which he named Pemberton's French wine coca. This potent blend combined wine, coca leaf extract, and cola nuts into a medicinal tonic that promised to address multiple health concerns simultaneously. The coca leaf extract provided cocaine, while cola nuts contributed caffeine, creating a powerful stimulant combination that masked pain while elevating mood and energy levels. The wine base made the mixture palatable, while adding its own mild psychoactive effects to the overall formula. Pemberton's French wine coca became locally popular among Atlanta residents who appreciated its energizing effects and perceived health benefits. The tonic found particular favor among professionals and laborers who valued the sustained energy and mental clarity that the cocaine and caffeine combination provided. Pemberton marketed his creation as a cure for various ailments including headaches, fatigue, and nervous disorders, positioning it as a sophisticated European-style health tonic rather than a recreational beverage. The success of Pemberton's original tonic provided him with steady income while seemingly addressing his personal addiction struggles through substitution rather than elimination. However, his business faced a devastating threat in 1886 when Georgia's growing temperance movement successfully banned alcohol sales throughout the state. This prohibition eliminated the wine base that made Pemberton's tonic palatable, while threatening to destroy the business he had built around his medicinal formula. Pemberton faced the urgent necessity of reformulating his successful tonic without alcohol, requiring him to find alternative ingredients that would maintain the product's appeal while complying with Georgia's new prohibition laws. The challenge was enormous, as the wine had provided both flavor and psychoactive effects that customers expected from the tonic. Pemberton needed to create a non-alcoholic version that would satisfy existing customers while attracting new ones in the changing legal environment. Pemberton's frantic 1886 experiments took place in his backyard laboratory, where he systematically tested various syrups and extracts to replace the banned wine component. He experimented with different sugar concentrations, flavoring agents, and botanical extracts, seeking the perfect combination that would recreate his tonic's appeal without alcohol. The process consumed months of trial and error as Pemberton struggled to maintain his business while developing an acceptable replacement formula. The accidental moment that would change beverage history forever occurred when Pemberton's assistant mistakenly added carbonated water instead of plain water to one of the experimental syrup mixtures. This substitution happened during routine preparation of a test batch, when the assistant confused the carbonated water supply with the still water typically used in the mixing process. The error seemed minor at first, as both liquids appeared identical until the mixing process began. Pemberton initially felt disappointment with the fizzy result, as carbonation had never been part of his tonic formulation and seemed to contradict the serious medicinal image he wanted to maintain. The bubbling mixture looked more like a frivolous soda fountain drink than the sophisticated health tonic that had built his reputation among Atlanta's professional class. Pemberton considered discarding the accidentally carbonated batch rather than wasting time testing what appeared to be a fundamental error in preparation. However, his growing realization that the carbonation improved the taste dramatically forced Pemberton to reconsider his initial negative reaction to the accident. The fizzy texture made the medicinal ingredients more palatable, while creating a refreshing sensation that plain syrup mixtures had never achieved. The carbonation also helped distribute flavors more evenly throughout the liquid, creating a more balanced taste experience that customers found appealing. Pemberton began promoting his accidentally carbonated creation as a fountain beverage rather than a traditional medicinal tonic, recognizing that the fizzy format opened new market opportunities beyond his original health-focused customer base. The refreshing carbonated version attracted customers seeking pleasant beverages rather than serious medical treatments, expanding his potential market significantly. Mounting financial pressures and declining health created urgency around Pemberton's 1888 decision to sell his formula for just $2,300. The pharmacist's morphine addiction had worsened despite his tonic success, while competition from other beverage manufacturers threatened his market position. Pemberton needed immediate cash to address his personal and business challenges, forcing him to accept far less than his creation's true value. Pemberton died shortly after selling his formula, never knowing that his accidental discovery would become the world's most valuable beverage brand. The modest $2,300 sale price represented one of history's most undervalued transactions, as the formula would eventually generate massive revenue for its subsequent owners. Today, Coca-Cola serves nearly 2 billion people daily across over 200 countries, accounting for nearly 20% of the entire global soda market. A pharmacist's attempt to escape one addiction accidentally created the world's most consumed branded beverage, demonstrating how personal struggles can produce solutions that captivate billions. This pattern of accidental discovery, transforming individual problems into global phenomena, reveals something profound about innovation itself. These discoveries share a common thread that extends far beyond their individual success stories. From Dr. Kellogg's forgotten wheat to Pemberton's carbonated error, each breakthrough demonstrates how chance discoveries reshape entire industries when curious minds recognize potential in apparent failures. These 10 accidental inventions continue to shape daily life with massive global footprints, proving that humanity's greatest innovations often emerge from its biggest mistakes. Your own failures and accidents might contain similar potential breakthroughs waiting for recognition. That rejected prototype gathering dust could become tomorrow's essential product. The experiment that went wrong might hold the key to solving problems you never considered. The next time something goes unexpectedly in your laboratory, kitchen, or workspace, pause before discarding it. Tomorrow's revolutionary products might be hiding in today's mistakes, waiting for someone curious enough to see opportunity where others